Ahoy, news mateys! Welcome to the news cruise.
Or here's some more news about us. Some more news. It's been a whole year since we last addressed the self-perpetuated hero complex that is Qanon, otherwise known as the rare reversed Ouroboros, an ever-growing serpent that vomits its own testes. So, happy anniversary, you guys! What did you get me? Oh, the original video has been removed due to a copyright strike? Okay. Well, in that case, here's a sweet gift for you called, Oh Dear God, we have to revisit Qanon? Can't the sun explode instead? Why can't it be both? So, just to recap, Qanon is a far-right conspiracy theory that Donald Trump, a president somehow, is quietly fighting a secret plot by the deep state to harbor a probably satanic ring of underground child sex traffickers consisting of high-level politicians and Hollywood elites who all conveniently are politically opposed to Donald Trump specifically. Their only evidence of this, besides countless Twitter photos covered in red circles, is a series of anonymous posts on 4chan, an anonymous forum with a long history of credibility by someone calling themselves Q and claiming to be working within the government. From this, what some would describe as flimsy foundation, grew a depressingly large structure of memes and social media hearsay, doing their best to wrap tendrils around any available straw in the hopes of preventing the shoddy theory from toppling down. And thanks to a little mainstream support, those shit tendrils grew thick, somehow keeping the whole worthless husk rolling like a dead owl in a concrete mixer. In other words, it's a collection of Trump supporters who know, in their deepest of cores, that our president lied about draining the swamp and is, in fact, bad at his job and very corrupt, but have managed to shield their egos from embarrassment by jumping on an elaborate explanation that conveniently justifies their support in the face of an obvious scam from an obvious con man. And when you mix this with actual news stories of sex trafficking and high-profile sexual predators, they can easily merge their wild theory with reality and declare it a victory. Specifically, the case of Jeffrey Epstein and the depressing invigoration it gave Qanon despite being overwhelmingly incriminating for the president hero they claim is neoing the entire world. We're certainly going to get to that, and how the morning we filmed this, Epstein was found dead in his cell after failing to kill himself weeks before. But for the sake of this initial recap, just imagine building an elaborate narrative of conspiracies to justify why it was okay that you gave $1,000 to an email scammer. That's basically what Qanon is. And the denial itself has turned into its own cottage industry, with various grifters selling Q-themed products to the easily dupable masses. Like, how great for scam artists that all their best marks have agreed to congregate in one place. And we know they are just insatiable marks, because of all the times this dingus horde has been hilariously wrong about their Q-themed predictions. Instead of detailing every single one, we'll just put a list on the screen of all the dates that Qanon said there was going to be mass arrests, or some kind of exposure of Trump's enemies in the deep state, or just anything happening at all, only to have nothing happen at all. Like, sometimes Q will literally just post that something, anything, will occur on a certain date and somehow still be wrong. Other times, it'll post extremely specific things, like Mark Zuckerberg stepping down from Facebook, and will be extremely specifically wrong. It really doesn't matter what kind of wrong Qanon will be, because it's every kind of wrong every time. Constantly wrong all the time. And while it has lost some true believers because of that, it amazingly has yet to stop existing. Because like any good scam, there's a built-in justification for why it's so clearly a scam that saves the people getting scammed from admitting that they're scammed. And that is the motto, trust the plan, seen here on a snazzy long-sleeve tee, which basically means that despite Q having failed to predict anything, ever, it's all a part of an elaborate plan that we must trust. So to recap, Qanon, the belief that Donald Trump's incompetence is all a part of an elaborate game of 7D chess, believes that Q's own incompetence is also part of an elaborate game of 7D chess. Because this is definitely what rational people think. rational people like Bill Mitchell, who explained away the QAnon show by tweeting, "If they are ever inaccurate, it is because plans change." See, that's all. It's not that QAnon is just blindly ass-pulling these predictions of Trump's imminent strike on a secret cabal of pedophiles and Satanists, or that Trump is just an obvious buffoon who is way too old and racist and can't even spell words and seems to attract sex criminals and is openly one himself, but rather that Trump just keeps pushing the date as part of his elaborate plan that's ever-changing.
Whenever President Trump does something that you can't understand or I can't understand, I always try to give it a few days, because his actions don't always make sense at first, but if you give it a few days and look into it and do some research, it always makes sense in the end. This man's brilliance, the plan has been in place for 20 years.
I mean, sure, prosecution of sex trafficking has gone significantly down since he became president, and it was his own labor secretary, the guy that gave sex trafficker Jeff Epstein an extremely good deal back in 2007, resulting in only 13 months of jail time for a sex trafficking. Anyway, it was that guy who plans to cut funds for combating trafficking by 80%. All of that, but you gotta trust the plan that changes 10 to 20 to 50 times before things will happen. Trump, seen here eye-fucking women at a 1992 party with Jeffrey Epstein, the child sex trafficker, is just waiting for the right time to strike. Hey, let's watch for a second. Let's watch Donald Trump totally playing 7D chess back in 1992 by groping women at a party that he had with Jeffrey Epstein, the child sex trafficker. It sure seems like our president is a sex criminal. But whatever, let's just keep having him as our president. Or maybe this is all part of his 20-year-long plan to catch these pedophiles.
The mainstream media never would have covered Jeffrey Epstein's arrest if they couldn't align him with President Trump. And having Alex Acosta, who has been aligned with Jeffrey Epstein, and it looks like covered up for Jeffrey Epstein, that enabled the mainstream media to attack Trump due to Jeffrey Epstein's arrest. And that forced the mainstream media to cover Jeffrey Epstein's arrest.
You see, Trump got involved with Epstein back in 1992 because he knew that 30 years later, when he became president, the media would try to attack him by connecting him to Epstein, thus taking Epstein down and exposing the child prostitution ring that Trump was absolutely not involved in himself, but knew about, but also let happen for 30 years. And in fact, documents reveal that some of the underage girls were recruited by Epstein at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's favorite place that he owns. And then this just in, on the morning we filmed this, Jeffrey Epstein, after being put on suicide watch, was taken off suicide watch and is now dead by, allegedly, suicide, making it way more difficult for his victims to achieve any sort of justice, or for the many wealthy elite child f***ers that were involved with Epstein to face justice. It's so brilliant that it's not. Anyway, this is the level of denial we are dealing with, which is probably why Q supporters can eat pounds of blatant bullshit and somehow not vomit it back up. Like, did you hear that JFK Jr. is not only alive and living under the fake name Vincent Fusca, but going to reveal himself on Trump's July 4th event? But if you need all of them deets, here's a nearly 2-hour video with over 130,000 views explaining it. There are also several tutorials teaching people how to make JFK Jr. masks for the event, which, if you are keeping up with the news, didn't feature the return of JFK Jr. But that's okay. Trust the plan, guys. Wail on that subscribe button. Also, buy these shirts about how JFK Jr. faked his death and is the Jason Bourne of Q. They make great gifts for your grandkids, you isolated and vulnerable person, you. And be sure to check out Adam Sandler's new film, Murder Mystery, which heavily features the letter Q monogrammed on pillows and is therefore connected and hiding QAnon clues in plain sight. It certainly couldn't be that these scenes take place at the home of a wealthy character named Quince. Here's my point. QAnon is obviously a sad grift aimed at the most susceptible Trump supporters out there. We don't need to spend all day digging through the theories and explaining how very clearly wrong they all are. What I'd rather focus on are the people enabling and profiting from them. The ones using the Q hogwash to either make a quick buck or gain favor with this fringe conservative group. Because the idea that this is just a harmless collection of dupes isn't true. It's easy to laugh at them. But there are real, disturbing consequences as this chunk of Americans drift further and further away from reality and into cult status. When the leather jackets over at Vice looked into personal stories of relationships with QAnon believers, as well as joined the various QAnon Facebook groups, they found the majority of stories either involved lonely boomers complaining about their families, or people clearly suffering from mental illness or PTSD. When QAnon believers show up in the news, it's usually due to some sad crime, like this guy who killed his brother because he thought he was a lizard man, or that mob boss murderer drawing Q symbols in court and claiming that he killed specifically for Trump. And I know that's all anecdotal evidence, but at this point, it's really hard to imagine a rational person being able to ride the Q train, considering that it's so far off the rails it's now hurtling through outer space. When James Comey used the 5 jobs I've had hashtag in one of his tweets, Q supporters took the first letters of his list, G, V, C, S, F, and decided that it was a hidden acronym for no reason before matching it to the only Google result, the Grass Valley Charter School Foundation, and then promptly causing so much conspiracy hype around their next event that it had to be canceled. This is unstable. Because since there are some people who are never going to leave no matter how many arrest deadlines get missed or how many over-the-top predictions fail miserably every time, there is now a growing murmur by these people about taking matters into their own hands.
They need to do it before 2020, because I believe if he doesn't, then he's going to lose support. And people are just going to get fed up. And honestly, people will start taking to the streets. I mean, I'm ready now to physically go to John Podesta's house and drag him out of his house.
Well, I'm all for citizen arrests at this point.
And so am I. And that's why, people are, it's just, this is dragged on for too long. We need to start seeing arrests of the real criminals. And I just pray to God that they happen really soon, because if they don't, I think that so much is coming out about the sex trafficking, what they do to kids. We are going to start seeing vigilante justice, and that could get really dangerous, and that could cause a civil war in this country.
Yeah, guys, with all that evidence consisting of anonymous posts on social media sites, it's sure weird that nothing is actually happening, the logical conclusion being that we clearly must start dragging people out of their homes, because of all the evidence. Also, here's a hit list of Obama-era officials posted by a dude with the Punisher logo as his icon. No big deal, nothing to worry about, totally normal and good. And also, the Department of Homeland Security just gutted its domestic terrorism team. Everything is doing just great. This is the powder keg in which Q currently resides. And along with being volatile, it is extremely susceptible, which is probably why there are so many people fanning the flames in exchange for neat blood bucks. Also known as the Great Awake Griftening. Hey you! Do you like having your walls plastered with conspiracy board gibberish, but simply don't have the time to cobble together miles of twine into an elaborate web of thumbtacked photos and scribblings? Well, luckily, there's not one, but two. No, not two, but three. No, actually 4. Not 4, but 5, or maybe 6 QAnon deep state maps that you can purchase for your wall. This website seems to be offering a 7th, but is also asking for our email to even look at it, which we're not going to bother even making a dummy account for, because when you're the true believer to what would be the biggest conspiracy known to mankind, you're going to need a commemorative coin to kickstart that revolution for the low, low price of $17. And yes, while there are multiple coins to choose from, that first Q coin is the only one you can get from Jordan Sather, a real thinker seen here boasting about drinking chlorine dioxide, something he regularly does, and also the host of Destroying the Illusion, a YouTube channel where he mostly just recaps unsubstantiated tweets like he's reading newspaper headlines.
I've got some tweets loaded up here to share with you. Links will be below, things you can research for yourself. I've got some hit pieces on Q in the mainstream media that we'll also take a look at, and let's do it. So, first of all, though, shout out to his sponsor of this channel, in Virtual Shield.
Oh, yeah. Also, shout out to his sponsor for sponsoring that. Boy, oh boy, you guys, we haven't even talked about the QAnon book, a bestseller written by, and this is real life, 12 co-authors, including Scorpio Patriot, Space Shot 76, Red Pill 78, Radix, Serial Brain 2, and Liberty Lioness, the final name revealing herself to be a self-described 70-year-old boomer lady in her chapter titled The Power of Memes. This book was in the top 60 on Amazon, and it was apparently just cobbled together from message board posts. Here's an excerpt that reads, quote, "Have you ever watched a Michael Jordan basketball match where at money time everyone expects him to shoot the ball, but he finally does not? The coach intentionally keeps him on court to trigger a forced double team on him so that the real shooter can be wide open. The coach has a predetermined strategy and then picks his final shooter from a wide variety of players. Video." A period. And then the word video. And another period. It is hard, deeply, deeply difficult to have faith in the intelligence of humanity when this book exists and is a bestseller. But it is, and good for them, and good luck to them, because the co-authors in the group are currently in their own personal battle about how far they should take the grift. Some of them refusing to approve an audiobook version, which, according to one of the authors, is in high demand because so many of their readers are too old to see. Seriously, this is our world, our whole world. Because it's not just the United States that are using QAnon as a meaty con. One far-right German neo-fascist group is using Q imagery to push their agenda on social media. A conservative politician in Canada is sharing QAnon YouTube videos. And then, of course, there's Russia, who probably is responsible for the entirety of Q's posts and has used 2,848 troll accounts to push QAnon theories from the start. Remember that conspiracy about the DNC murdering Seth Rich? You know, the one that Sean Hannity and Fox News pushed on their programming until the Rich family sued them. The baseless conspiracy theory that thanks to Fox News, a lot of people still believe? Well, it turns out that, according to the U.S. federal prosecutor in charge of Rich's case, that conspiracy theory was created and planted by Russian trolls. Good job, Fox. You news station that is somehow still legally allowed to call yourself the news, you. Way to have all the journalistic fact-checking of a racist grandpa too old to see.
At the same time, we have this very strange story now of this young man who worked for the Democratic National Committee who apparently was assassinated at 4 in the morning, having given WikiLeaks something like 53,000 emails and 17,000 attachments. Nobody's investigating that.
Thank you, Newt. A person we should still be allowing on television. And that brings me to our next juicy segment, Q-nablers who should be Q-shamed of themselves. So imagine that you're a news dude, or dudette of course, and you're trying to show that our president's recent executive order has credible support. So you go to Twitter and find credible accounts to put on your extremely popular news show. One would presume you check to see what other things those accounts have tweeted in the past, and perhaps even taken a moment to glance at the names on those accounts, right? The names that appear above every one of their tweets. You are, after all, giving these random people a huge signal boost while displaying them as credible opinions. I'm just making sure we're all on the same page before this happens.
Another Twitter user chiming in saying, do not for a second underestimate the significance of this executive order. Thank you, President, for reestablishing and preserving free speech rights for all students.
I feel like I've been sarcastically saying this a lot, but oh, good job there, Fox News! Way to make a major QAnon conspiracy peddler named QAnon76 squee over your name drop, you absolutely non-corrosive knot sludge that shouldn't be abolished. Because it would be one thing if we were talking about a small group of internet nut jobs here, sad and isolated and in desperate need for community and help though they may be. But this is an ever-growing, sycophantic and batshit conspiracy based on, and I can't stress this enough, absolutely no credible evidence, and it's being supported by major positions in our media and government, up to and including the fucking president. In a sane world, anyone who gives it credence would be intervened and removed from power. And yet we now have several lawmakers openly promoting QAnon, one in South Carolina and the other currently running for office in Florida. And while that first person eventually walked it back, you know, after the damage had been done, the dude running in Florida actually has a QAnon section of his campaign website that simply reads, and again, this is real life, "Who is Q?" The answer, of course, being a completely anonymous source on a racist message board that has zero credibility or sourcing, is perpetually incorrect, and is being propped up as a shield against the obvious reality that our president isn't very good. There, I answered your question, serious political candidate, so maybe now you can take the page down, and perhaps also your entire campaign. It's actually the least surprising that Trump himself has boosted QAnon on multiple occasions, because he's like, dumb, and generally seems to have no idea what he's doing or what he's about to do at any given moment, and just gloms on to whatever is in front of him, despite the implications, whether it be some racist slogan or an adorable conspiracy baby.
I'm disliked, but actually they respect us. That's more important. Look at that beautiful baby. Look at that beautiful baby. Wow, what a baby. What a baby. That is a beautiful baby. That's like from an advertisement. Perfect. Look how happy that baby is. So beautiful. Thank you, darling. That's really nice.
In fairness, that baby being used as a prop for a volatile conspiracy theory around child sex trafficking is a very beautiful baby. Great baby spotting, Mr. President. But again, not surprising if he didn't even notice the big stupid Q onesie, because not only does Trump have zero need to do anything to make QAnon snowball any more than it is, but honestly, he might not be aware of it at all. And the fact that Lion Sanders, one of the liars, specifically addressed Q, saying that the president is aware of and condemns QAnon.
Two quickies about last night in Tampa. First of all, does the president encourage the support of people who showed up last night in these QAnon and Blacks for Trump fringe groups?
On the first part, the president condemns and denounces any group that would incite violence against another individual, and certainly doesn't support groups that would promote that type of behavior.
Just makes me think even more that he absolutely doesn't know what they are. The people I'd much rather call out for their playful curiousness are the ones that don't already have 1,000 impeachable offenses on the back burner. People who, when the dust settles, need to be condemned by their own party and 100% f*** off for the rest of time. They got Notch, because of course they did. Also in the no shit bucket are celebrities James Woods and Roseanne Barr. Then there's Kurt goddamn Schilling for some reason. But the scariest show of support has to be the clickbait reaction to the Epstein arrest, an actual wealthy sex trafficker with ties to Hollywood. Despite Epstein not being on QAnon's radar until he was already exposed to the public, weird, this can easily be seen as a validation. So when New York Magazine posts headlines like this, they should absolutely be ashamed of themselves and probably apologize for it. And not just because it's on the section of their magazine called Intelligencer. Because the answer there is no, New York Magazine. QAnon wasn't right. In fact, they aren't even right about the people who we know are rapists. You've probably seen this photo on Twitter or social media of Bill Clinton with a woman claimed to be Rachel Chandler flying on Epstein's Lolita Express. And while the Lolita Express absolutely had Clinton listed as a passenger in the flight log books about 26 times, that specific picture, when looked at through a 5-second Google image search, is from a 2009 Gawker article about Bill Clinton on another billionaire womanizer's jet, Ron Burkle. It doesn't change the point being made about old rapey Bill, and in fact adds to it because Burkle is an entirely different scandal. But it's important to note that nowhere in that article, or any article anywhere, does it state that woman is Rachel Chandler, a real person who QAnon is now targeting as an accomplice to the sex trafficking cabal, despite having no factual connection whatsoever. They're taking an actual news story and tracing it over with misinformation so that they can credit themselves for it and get the added bonus of terrorizing a woman. Pizzagate booster Mike Cernovich, who lies about not boosting Pizzagate, is already taking credit for the arrest by saying it was his courtroom win that unsealed the Epstein files, while ignoring the fact that it was actually a case by the New York Times that unsealed the files. It's the journalism brag equivalent of, I loosened it first, but by someone who didn't even touch the metaphorical pickle jar. Cut the shit, Mike! And according to documents filed by the victim's lawyer, Cernovich's move to unseal the files was an attempt to intimidate the victim as a proxy for Alan Dershowitz, who has been named as being involved in Jeffrey Epstein's child sex ring. So cut the shit, Mike, into little slices and eat it. Eat the shit up. There's this real pedophile sex trafficker, who is now dead somehow, who had links to many very powerful people who deserve to be exposed. One of which is probably our president, another of which is an ex-president, who said he'd only been on Epstein's plane a couple of times when it was 26. And QAnon is going to completely delude the narrative with their bullshit, and attention-hungry news sites are going to let them. And considering the dark hole we've explored today, that these are, by all accounts, confused, lonely, and mentally ill people who are becoming increasingly violent and unstable. It's a cult, united across the internet, all centered around this guy. And that's just, it's super wrong. This is all very wrong, and I hate it. And you should hate it too. And someone should do something about it. And I don't know what. But if you have a family member or a friend that believes this stuff, don't give up on them, no matter how frustrating it is, because once they're fully isolated from reality, it'll get worse for them. And if you have maybe you don't talk to a family member or a friend because of this stuff anymore. Maybe you've cut them off. Maybe give them a call. It'll probably be very frustrating. But you're better than Q. We are better than Q. Also, it's weird they're cutting the budget for sex trafficking by 80%. Okay, see ya. Hi everybody. Thanks for watching the video. A moment ago, the President of the United States retweeted a conspiracy theory that the Epstein thing that happened was because of the Clintons. The Clintons did it. And it's gonna get worse, and he's gonna keep doing it, and I just don't know. This video will come out a week or so after this. Okay, thanks for watching. Make sure to check out our podcast, Even More News, and like and subscribe on the channel, and tell the Q people in the comments that they're wrong and you can help them, and check out our tpublic.com/user/somemore-news. The link is in the description. Patreon. Unreal. Want some water? Kinda.